CrowdStrike CEO confirms, quote, no cyber attack or security breach, unquote. CrowdStrike says, quote, a fix for defective update has been deployed, unquote. Microsoft, on its part, viewers, has come out and said the global systems are normalizing as root cause of the outage has been fixed. But till the last we checked, there were still several systems that were coming to terms with this disruption. The descent into coma triggered global mayhem. No country except autarkies like China, Russia, and North Korea was spared. And because India is a paid-up member of the globalized rules-based world order, it was strongly buffeted. 56 flights cancelled and over 160 plus flights delayed. There was absolute frustrated mayhem at the airports. Breakdown of e-checking and boarding systems, carriers and airports shift to manual check-ins. Some people were having a problem retraining their staff to do manual check-in. Handwritten boarding passes were given to passengers. Disruptions were reported in accessing banking apps. Disruptions hit Office apps, Microsoft 365, Microsoft Teams and Azure. Disruptions reported in accessing Instagram, Amazon, Gmail, and there were several others, viewers, which we are still assessing. That a single misplaced bit of computer code could bring whole nations to their knees reveals just how fragile the world is. It should have been clear enough to everyone 3 years ago when a single sneeze triggered a global pandemic that stilled the globe. But some lessons are hard learned. Once bitten isn't always twice shy. This disruption was because of a malfunction. What if the next cyber pandemic is because of malevolence, sabotage? This question needs to be pondered by those who mocked Prime Minister Modi for reading the signals right after COVID struck. They laughed at him for unveiling his vision for an Atmanirbhar Bharat, an India that wasn't hermetic, but self-reliant enough to wither global catastrophes. Let me take you through the cast of those big leaders, those tall leaders that had a stab at Narendra Modi when he talked about Atmanirbharta and the importance of Atmanirbharta in a world where globalization has not always produced the results that we were hoping. In fact, globalization has led or accentuated the impact of catastrophes. Mallikarjun Kharge, September 16, 2023 said, such slogans are merely hollow words meant to distract nations from government failures. Rahul Gandhi, who could be the next Prime Minister, February 9, 2022 said, Statue of Equality is made in China. New India is China Nirbhar. Akhilesh Yadav, January 2, 2021. We cannot get vaccinated by the BJP's vaccine. Kapil Sibal, June 2020. This is another Jumla. That is the only thing we make in India, and we are masters at that under this government. Globalization has brought many benefits, but it has also had its misses. Let me take you through some hard facts, viewers. Thailand joined the RCEP. But in last 18 months, its GDP growth has slumped to 2.7% because China dumped goods. And when I argued, and people like me in government argued, viewers, against India joining the RCEP, we were called protectionists, anti-globalists, hyper-nationalists. Another hard fact, Mexico joined NAFTA and has had a negative impact as it has faced trade deficits and uneven competition with the US. India's independent trade agreements with countries like US, EU and ASEAN have enabled it to negotiate better trade terms and increase its exports. Had they been part of these larger conglomerates, these larger trading alliances, it may not have ended that way, viewers. We wouldn't be where we are today at 7 point whatever it is % of GDP. Hard fact, another one, by being independent enough to impose tariffs and other trade trade barriers, India has managed to protect its agricultural and industrial sector. Another hard fact, US presidential frontrunner Donald Trump, who could well be the president of the United States, has proposed a flat 10% tariff hike to protect and nurture domestic manufacturing, and he's also saying that he is not going to become one of those global cops who is going to give and give and give to NATO. In fact, the time has come for European countries, if they want to be part of some big alliance that has the American imprint, to pay for their security. Here's another hard fact, viewers. India's over-dependence on Chinese imports when it came to masks, anti-contamination kits, testing kits, APIs, makes it vulnerable to supply chain disruptions such as those caused by COVID-19 pandemic. You remember, when COVID-19 happened, we didn't even have 100 masks to our name. Big question. What will all those who wanted India to join RCEP and other multilateral trading blocs say now on the back of these hard facts? Will they continue to mock Modi for having proposed Atmanirbharta or come up with the concept of Atmanirbhar Bharat? Let's open this up. Rajiv Chandrasekhar, former Minister of State Information Technology, is with us. So is Anand Ranganathan, Tehseen Poonawala. We also have political analyst Jiten Jain, cyber security expert. Of course, we'll talk to you not about the political implications of this, so don't look worried. I can see the color draining from your face. Don't look worried. I'm not going to suck you into the larger debate. I'm just going to ask you a couple of things, Jiten Jain. And let me begin with you, since you're the expert about how this meltdown actually happened and how can we insulate ourselves from it.
Look, Anand, Microsoft as an operating system company.
The Anand is sitting on the top right of your screens.
Yeah.
And
sorry, I'm unable to see that video.
Yeah.
So, Microsoft as an operating system company uses multiple third-party service providers. CrowdStrike, which is a threat intelligence and cybersecurity company, happens to be one of them. Now, CrowdStrike issued an update in their sensor called Falcon, which is a threat intelligence feed. And whoever a Microsoft user or a company or enterprise was using that Falcon sensor with Microsoft, the moment they received that update, their systems crashed. Now, it is essentially because these operating systems have an inbuilt feature, inherent feature. Whenever you install a new hardware in a computer which is not working properly, or you put a code which is malicious, or you by mistake install some app which is not working properly, which may lead to the operating system crash. Windows has an inherent feature of running a stop code, and they show a blue screen, which is a screen of death. That system gets freeze, you can't do anything. The only thing you can do is try and reboot the system, or you can try and reboot the system in safe mode with very limited connectivity features. Now, in this case, whichever users, and the first ones were in Australia, because it is the updates come as per the time zones. So Australians received the first thing, then it came to Asia, and then went to Europe. Whichever Microsoft users or enterprise which are using Microsoft operating systems and Crowd, the moment they received that update of CrowdStrike, a file got installed in their system and the system crashed. And the worst was when they tried to reboot the system, it was still showing this blue screen. There was no way out. Now, we must remember that CrowdStrike is no doubt they are a very reputed company, but whenever you install push a new update, you test it at multiple levels, multiple times in beta mode, then you test in a control environment. And Microsoft also, they have very strong third-party policies. They also, test several times in-house before pushing an update at that. And Microsoft is not a small company. You're looking at billions of computers, and that to enterprise one across the world. So we have really no idea how did this push through. And then look at the outages. I mean, if you just assume that Delhi airport systems are not working for 4 hours, no. To normalize the things, it might take 4 weeks. And then the hospitals, then the stock markets. You look, now they have to do all the operations manually, the stock markets, the trades which didn't work. The companies will not say that, okay, we will roll back all the things which happened in the market. Some things are irreversible. So hospitals suffered, patients are not being able to get admitted. So I think Microsoft cannot, do away from the fact by saying that a third-party operator has owed up the mistake. We are not responsible. I think everybody is equally responsible. Third, we as a society are also equally responsible. In this mad rush to install all AI-based systems and automate everything, we must now realize that every company has a disaster recovery plan, an emergency plan, or a standard SOP. How will the functions work if something goes wrong? But it's a learning lesson for all of us, probably a lifetime lesson which comes in decades and evolution of any technology. We must learn how to go back to manual systems in case of an emergency. It has happened in Delhi airports in the past also because of disconnectivity, because of the malicious code. In Ukraine, it has happened because of war and airstrikes. But we must learn our lessons from Ukraine war. We must learn from lessons what has happened today, that in case of over dependency on a foreign enterprise, foreign operators, or vendors which are not beyond your control, you must always have an emergency mechanism to switch back to manual mode, especially on hospitals and telecom companies and airport operations. They may be slow, they may be 20% of the capacity, but things should never come to a standstill. And these European airlines which are facing worse, it is because they even stopped boarding pass check-ins. They just put up some machines and they said, come and scan your boarding pass, put your luggage will go to the tarmac and you fly and get your luggage back. There was no manual operators available there. And that is why they had to ground the airlines. Whole operations were shut. In India, at least we still have mix of human interventions on operators. And that is why we were less impacted by all this. And last question I want to ask, see, when something has gone wrong in the system, there were many people, including CrowdStrike, which has offered some off solutions that delete this file, you might be able to restore some solutions. These stopgap arrangements are good for private people like us, or small private companies. But for bigger enterprises, banks, stock exchanges, you can't touch a file without a proper, you don't even have admin rights.
Yes.
So entire IT team has to follow an SOP, take an approval from Microsoft before doing such a thing, and you don't know what the dependencies are, what else might get impacted. So by just giving a quick fix solution, you can't just fix it in 5 minutes. There are a lot of SOPs involved. And that is why telecom companies, which have a stronger SOPs, that, even if Microsoft rolls in an update, they don't allow that update to go into their systems unless they have tested them on their own systems in a test control environment. That is why every enterprise which are not allowed Microsoft updates to just randomly go through in their gateways were saved, and everyone who allowed are suffering. And that brings us to a fundamental question, that because it is a global meltdown, Microsoft and CrowdStrike's response was very quick. But if this update had impacted only Indian systems, I can tell you it would have been 48 hours before they wake up and issue some sort of resolution. So we must remember, because we were a part of a global meltdown, we also got an instant fix. But if we were the only one, we would have been treated like a third world resource, and they would have been sleeping for a week, and over the weekend and Monday they would have picked up our call and said that, okay, fine, we'll do something. Right. So I think it's a learning lesson for all of us, that over dependency on foreign vendors or even private vendors beyond our control, and that too a dependency which is, it's incomprehensible. I think 90%
absolutely.
of our
I think you're absolutely right. It's complete. And this was on the back, Dr. Ranganathan, of a malfunction. What if it was malevolence? What would have happened?
You never know. You never know that in that update, probably somebody played a mischief. You never know.
Yes, well, you never know, Mr. Jain. Unfortunately, यहाँ पर जैसे आत्मनिर्भरता की बात होती है और मोदी जी करते हैं, तो फिर उनको, he's treated with great contempt. But anyhow, let's open this up, because Dr. Ranganathan and, of course, ex-MOS also with us, Mr. Rajiv Chandrasekhar, Tehseen Poonawalla also is with us, and of course we will have a bit of a political argy-bargy also on the side. But Dr. Ranganathan, before we get into that, what's your take tonight?
Good evening, Rahul, and good evening to my fellow panelists, two of whom are real experts, so Rajiv and Mr. Jain. So my talking about technology is like taking coal to Dhan Bath. Be that as it may, I want to give a common man's perspective, which is, isn't what this is Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam? The world is a family. So instead of being alarmist and junking integration into the world, I actually see this as a serious issue faced by the family. The family will come together and solve it. It already has. And the family will get together and make sure such a thing doesn't happen frequently. Many people are now predictably understandably, I would say, talking about us adopting a local alternative to Microsoft or such technology. But the thing is, anything that is connected to the internet or cyberspace, whether local or global software, is hackable. That's why EVMs are safe, because they are not connected to cyberspace. Any local alternative to software would therefore still be prone to hacking. We just have to accept this and work as a world family to solve this. The other reason, of course, is that in technology, two things are vital: competition and cutting edge. If local software is not cutting edge, Indian companies using it will not be able to compete with the world companies and will fall by the wayside. Do we want that? Instead, we should have a choice to choose the best software or technology or product there is. To give you just one example, the Prime Minister's car is an armored BMW. Why not a Mahindra? Because we as yet don't make an armored car as good as what is needed to protect our Prime Minister best. We will in the future, of course we will. But till such time we have to use the best there is to protect the Prime Minister makes complete sense. If I may, just a minute, I'd like to expound a little on this local versus global, Rahul, spine always grows in the back that is against the wall. Today we may feel our spine is against the wall, back is against the wall. We as a nation have done brilliantly over the last 75 years. Of course we have. We have developed world-beating technologies that the entire world is currently using. But we don't have the world's best technology in all sectors. So in my view, an emotional nudge is fine. In fact, it should be encouraged as long as one doesn't adopt protectionism. There has to be a balance between local and global, and that local cannot apply to all sectors of our economy. The easiest sectors to go local as well as reform are agriculture and tourism. But there are sectors where we cannot afford to go local, like technology, pharma, defense, all the time. We spend only 0.7% of our GDP on science and technology, lowest amongst all BRICS nations. We haven't produced a single biggest blockbuster drug in decades. When life is at risk, we cannot choose a local drug over a foreign one if the latter works much better. When security is at risk, we cannot choose Tejas over Rafale, for this isn't being local. This is being suicidal. So yes, nudge us to go local. Uncle Chips over Pringles, Amul over Haagen-Dazs, Ajanta Ellora over Big Ben, Shilajit over Viagra. This is acceptable. But don't nudge us so much that we are pushed off the globalization cliff, either on full import or local MNC manufacturing. Gain spine, but not at the cost of losing your head.
Absolutely. I mean, I agree with you fundamentally. And till we don't, of course, develop the capacities, we must have a balance. But we will never develop the capacities till, as Dr. Ranganathan also says, we don't try to grow a spine when we have our backs to the wall. So we can't also have the other side saying, no, this is just complete balderdash. This business of Atmanirbharta and all of this. And today I think the chickens are coming home to roost. Tomorrow it could be and Mr. Jain has already sort of suggested it could be tomorrow malevolence. It could be actually a cyber pandemic. And then we are left with nothing. So start building redundancies now, start thinking about it, and don't mock anyone's thought or appreciation of that idea. Let me bring in Mr. Rajiv Chandrasekhar. Let's get a very informed perspective. Tehseen is also here with us. He's raising his finger. Mr. Chandrasekhar, how do you view the havoc caused by the outage in the context of an interconnected world?
This is unprecedented, Rahul. I mean, I've been around the block a few times in technology. I've spent 3.5 decades in this space. And I have certainly seen many system crashes and meltdowns, including on my watch as a minister. But I have never seen something so deep, so widespread as this Microsoft 365 meltdown. And it is certainly should worry all of us, because at the end of the day, it seems to me that the culprit was neither the underlying physical internet, nor was it the data center, nor was it the cloud, nor was it the application itself. It turns out that it was a cybersecurity agent, a small piece of software in a very complex architecture that broke and was incompatible. And essentially, you've seen laid low businesses, large and small, and put at risk and disruption hundreds and thousands and lakhs of consumers and customers of banks and airlines and other enterprises. So fairly shattering experience to just watch this play out. It is fairly unprecedented.
Is there therefore
know the history of technology. I've never seen something like this.
Is there therefore a need to build redundancies that make us less dependent? For example, the COVID pandemic taught us the importance of Atmanirbharta as supply chains were so stretched and in some cases just completely snapped.
Yeah, so a number of questions do come out of this experience, and these are questions not unique to India, or it's a question that businesses and enterprises and governments are asking all over the world. Of course, the one question that is the intuitive question for everybody to ask is this over-dependence on these few platforms around the world, big tech as we refer to them. Is that healthy? Is that sustainable? Is there a need for more competition and more choice? So that is one aspect of it. The second aspect is that as we digitize and accelerate our digitization even more, these systems are becoming more complex and there are multiple layers to the systems that we do not see. We see a ubiquitous application or you see a ubiquitous internet, but essentially these are sitting on multiple layers that are all independently being built, whether it's a data center, whether it's the physical internet, whether it's the cloud, whether it's the actual application. And then in between all of these, we have these small players like this Falcon CrowdStrike cybersecurity agent that is an endpoint cybersecurity solution. And any of these things could give for the entire system to be disrupted. So we are playing in a very, very complex playground with multiple moving parts.
So let me ask you.
It seems to me at the end of the day, there has to be some accountability at some level. Whether it is
accountability, yes, of course. But, that's a question we'll come to a little later. I just want to get to the nub of this. Many mock the Prime Minister, emphasis on Atmanirbharta. Is this a wake-up call for all those people? Is this a reality check for all of them? I mean, there were so many of them from the Congress party. There was Mr. Kharge, Rahul Gandhi. There were several of these people.
Yeah, look, they've been wrong on so many things before. I don't think they're particularly uniquely wrong on this particular issue, whether it is on UPI and digital payments. I mean, there's a whole chapter and verse that I can lay out on how they've read India wrong, how they've read Indian capabilities wrong, and how they've read the power of Indian innovation and young Indians to do what the rest of the world is doing wrong. So look, I agree with you completely. In a lot of ways, this over dependence on big tech, American big tech, is something that is not sustainable. In my opinion, this is not just relevant to India, it's relevant to the rest of the world, that this over dependence on US big tech is something that is unhealthy. There is a concentration of risk, there's a concentration of power and commercial value that is getting built into these big tech platforms. And Prime Minister has openly encouraged investments and growth of Indian innovation. And frankly, there is a company today called Zoho, which is designed in India, built in India by a remarkable patriot, Sridhar Vembu, who's headquartered this in Tenkasi, Tamil Nadu, and has got a very comparable set of enterprise applications that Microsoft today has. So, and the government of India has increasingly used Zoho for its own use as well. So I think we are getting there. This may, in a sense, accelerate.
Accelerate that process. I actually buy that argument completely. Tehseen Poonawalla, why then does the Congress party have this sort of, look, I'm not only singling the Congress party out, there were several other leaders also. Every time India has sort of tried to make itself less dependent by forging ahead with something or the other, we find that the opposition reflexively calls it a jumla. Is that sort of the right approach? And especially now, sort of an interconnected world like this, where a ripple here can actually trigger a tsunami somewhere else?
Good evening, Rahul. Thank you for having me on the show. I think you are signaling out the opposition. I think that's unfair of you, and allow me to put my points why. opposition will legitimately ask questions. No one in opposition, and I was actually checking when you raised these points, nobody in opposition actually spoke about or blamed the government for what happened today. Nobody did. Obviously, if it's a global outage, it's got something to do with a security cyber company that's failed. Nobody's going to blame the prime minister for it. But on other issues, please understand India is the leader in Web 2.0. Web 2.0 under the Congress, and the BJP, Atal Bihari Vajpayee ji, came to parliament on a bullock cart. Now, let me make some substantive points because you've gone all around the place. This was not about pharmaceutical, but in pharmaceutical, you spoke about COVID. My friend Adar's vaccine was not made by Serum. Serum manufactured it. It was an Astra vaccine and Oxford vaccine. What happened to the Indian vaccines, including the one that the Honorable Prime Minister went? The Hyderabad vaccine was not recognized by WHO. You can say whatever conspiracy. None of the other vaccines came, and Adar actually saved us. It wasn't really an Indian vaccine, though manufactured in India. And I give Adar credit for it. I think Adar should have got more. Now let's come to and what did the government do? They threw Adar under the bus. They said you can sue them in court. That's what the government of India do. But let's come to the technological issue. Do you know on 15th March 2023, Microsoft Cloud had an outage? Did we learn from that? Do you know the AIMS was attacked, was a cyber attack on AIMS? It was one of the worst cyber attacks in our country, and the government was absolutely clueless for 3 days. They only started reacting after 3 days. Let me ask you, since you spoke about COVID, where is the Setu data? The Arogya Setu so-called bodyguard data. Do you have any clue where is it? The data protection laws are still not in place. We don't even, as so far as, and I agree with the Honorable ex-minister, we have some of the best AI companies in India, some of the good companies that are coming up. But for every success story, most AI fintechs are today registering in Dubai. They aren't registering in India because you're not clear on laws. You're not clear on data protection. You're not clear on open source coding. You're not clear on public open source coding. Unless we don't build and encourage building of it on an open source democratic manner,
when Bharat Biotech,
we will not move forward.
Okay, since you are talking, since you brought up, no, 1 second, since you brought up this issue of vaccines, I was just generally talking about, I was talking about Atmanirbharta. Okay, I wasn't talking about any one particular sector, this, that, the other. I was talking about the general concept, Atmanirbhar Bharat, which was woefully rubbished, and I never implied that today the opposition has attacked Modi for what happened. I never even meant that. I never even said that. I'm just saying that there is a general reluctance to embrace. For example, the RCEP controversy, and I think Dr. Ranganathan might have been on that debate, and I did it when I was the editor-in-chief of another channel. I even wrote a piece for the Times of India, where I argued against us entering the RCEP. And we were accused, all those people who argued against that point, including, of course, spokespersons of the government, including in the Ministry of External Affairs, they were all called ultra-nationalists, as regressive protectionists. In fact, this government has undertaken no protectionist programs. All and most protectionist programs that have ever been undertaken have been undertaken under the Congress, let's be very honest, or other left-leaning governments. So I just want to make that clear.
I don't think that's true.
Tariffs.
Let me give you an example.
No, 1 second. Tariffs.
Let me give you a practical example just now, since you're talking about technology. This government one day, just sir, give me 30 seconds. It's not true. Give me 10 seconds. This government one day got up, decided that they will suddenly ban the import of laptops into India. Suddenly they realized it's not practical 2 days later.
Suddenly they realized, right? Because they were open to criticism. They tried something and it failed. No, hang on. Every CEO tries something and it fails. But someone didn't get up one day and nationalize the entire banking system, pretty much all companies, and told everybody who was a multinational to leave and create a jobs crisis and then decide also to impose such huge taxes. Okay, 1 second. Let's be reasonable. Tessin, we can't throw out the baby with the bathwater. Certain things were done which weren't in the interests of this country. We have to accept it. Luckily, Dr. Manmohan Singh at least had the sense. And, and of course, the Prime Minister at that time, Narasimha Rao, not a Gandhi family Prime Minister, but someone from outside of that system, had the sense to realize that we were in the boonies, quite frankly. But Dr. Ranganathan, very quickly on this issue, because, we can keep banding words and pulling out 1 or 2 examples. The general thrust must be on building redundancies in every sector. I think that's inarguable.
Absolutely no doubt about it. And I'm the first votary for Atmanirbhar, but I've said this. We have to be the world's best if we have to be the world. So then
let me ask you, Dr. Ranganathan, let me ask you that then. Because you see, India's agricultural sector is still the largest contributing to the GDP. Now, a few years ago, 40%. Jobs contributed towards labor and jobs. Okay. So a few years ago, a decision was taken to double, for example, farm incomes, to make us less dependent, hopefully, on imports of, let's say, pulses, this, that, the other, diversify the crop basket, let's grow other stuff, so that we could even export and turn into net exporters. What happens? A bunch of farmers, propped up by the opposition, jump in and say, no, this won't even fly.
Yes.
Now, what is protectionism then?
No,
Isn't that protectionism to the nth power?
Don't rub salt on my wounds. It was the greatest decisions in independent India's history, the reforms, and it was the greatest back down.
Yeah.
At what I've called as an anti-national step, the repeal of those farm laws. And of course, the opposition is squarely to be blamed for it, including the Supreme Court as well. They went back on their U-turn on their promises manifestos. But I want to say a couple of things. You asked a very pertinent question. No one should be against Atmanirbharta, especially in sectors that are crucial to our well-being. For example, the defense sector. But I gave you an example. We are still dependent upon foreign technology. For example, for Rafales, we're still buying things. Why? Because we want the best protection for ourselves. But in cases where alternative was there, I'm afraid the government was found wanting. Let me give you just two examples. The first example is in the case of COVID. Did you know 2 billion doses of vaccines were administered? 1.8 billion of those were actually a vaccine that was made in Oxford.
Yeah.
Only 200 million doses were of Atmanirbhar vaccine. We did not encourage enough because we did not culture the virus in time. We were even 3 months later than America, and we call ourselves the world vaccine hub. The second example is the latest one called Coup. This was an alternative to Twitter. Now that is a company that has declared bankruptcy. I want to ask a simple thing. If we want to encourage Atmanirbharta, why was the Prime Minister not on Coup instead of Twitter? That would have given a tremendous signal, and people would have encouraged Coup.
Dr. Ranganathan, look, the government has been in power for 10 years. It's done quite a bit already. A lot of things have happened. Today we're at 7.1 or 7.2% of GDP, and we're expected to hold that rate when other global economies are going to slow once again. Had perhaps Modi had another 10 years in office, maybe we could have had a more informed, discussion. Yes, there have been misses, but look, an attempt is being made. I mean, imagine if we had been able to double farm incomes. Where would we have been? Today, the GDP would have grown by 4 or 5 more percent, viewers. And the Congress promised those same steps. And then they say, don't focus on the Congress party and the opposition. What is one to do?
May I ask you a question?
No, sir, you can blame and blame and blame.
May I ask you? No,
of course.
I'm
saying, sir, there's a lot to be done.
Rahul,
but it has to be an enabling environment. Yes, Mr. Jain.
But Rahul,
yes.
Sorry.
Rahul,
yes, Mr. Jain.
The journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step, and that Indian opposition has become, it has become their habit to ridicule that first step.
And here I was thinking that you were shrinking away from saying a political statement. मैंने तो आपसे open करना था actually. Made the big mistake.
सच बोलना चाहिए ना. सच कड़वा होता है, and I'll tell you what, when government decided to invest heavily into UPI and RuPay card, when they asked private sector banks to start issuing RuPay cards, many people called it arm twisting, protectionism. But I think government was trying to protect Indian society from the monopoly of Visa and MasterCard, from those two foreign vendors which are minting money 2.5% on every transaction. Now today, that small step towards UPI and RuPay card has become a global success story.
ISRO, this great thing that Mr. Nehru founded. How much money was committed to ISRO?
I want to tell you a very important thing which is so critical to our national security.
Okay.
See, what has happened today is maybe a human error, or maybe something which happened which was beyond human control. But imagine somebody, if tomorrow they want to do it deliberately.
That's what I'm
saying. I'll tell you a scenario. SWIFT, which was sold as a global common, a global family asset of every country. When it came to war, all Western countries got together and kicked out Russia.
That's right.
So all this whole sharaba of global common and being on a global asset and a common asset of everyone were all thrown into a dustbin. A technology was weaponized to win a war. Tomorrow, God forbid, if India, goes to an alliance which is not in the right on the American side, tomorrow if US decides to use Microsoft to weaponize the war, I mean, today Australia received this whole update first
That's
because
true.
there was a time zone issue.
Yeah.
By using several indicators like time zone, you can push an update to
No,
a
I
particular
completely
geography.
agree with you.
Microsoft. It
That's
is
the
not
greater
about
worry.
Microsoft. But tomorrow, any foreign country can weaponize
Absolutely.
anything which you are over
No,
dependent
and the
upon.
Chinese have announced that they can do it.
And
So,
Rahul, I want to ask everybody a question. We all buy this Microsoft laptops for our home with Windows. From last 2-3 years, they have made it mandatory to create this online cloud Microsoft 365 account. Even when you're setting up a new laptop, you merely want to log in. You just can't have an offline user like old days. You have to make a Microsoft
There you
online
go.
cloud account. Then
Mr.
only you
Jain,
can
become a
log in.
Luddite like
This
me.
is-
Buy a grade 1 kind of phone and run with it. वही मैंने किया है.
No, but nobody's raising a voice because
No, I know.
Western countries have decided to get together because that is
It's a
data
very
collection.
good point.
We
Look,
do
viewers,
not have a data privacy.
I need to move on.
Rule
This
today.
is obviously aroused a lot of passions. I didn't intend to get people so lathered up about this issue, but it is a very, very, very important issue. And we are now moving to another one, viewers, where there are some questions to be asked. Dr. Ranganathan will be there with us. Mr. Pulla Rao will be there with us. And I think Tehseen Poonawala or the BJP national spokesperson from Chennai will also be joining us. Now, viewers, let's focus on this story. It's an important story. The sun is going to be dawning on Tamil Nadu, a new sun. Excuse the pun. We are talking about Udayanidhi Stalin. He is going to be very soon exalted to the position of Deputy Chief Minister. Now, viewers, many people are already asking questions about whether he merits such an elevation. After all, when someone is elevated to the post of a Deputy Chief Minister, it means that they're taking on huge responsibility. They are the de facto Chief Minister. And in fact, Udayanidhi is being pushed into that chair so that he can lessen the burden of the work that is falling on Mr. M.K. Stalin, his father. So he is going to play a critical role. But there are questions being asked, viewers, today about the silence of the left ecosystem. Because Mr. Udayanidhi Stalin has been pulled up by the Supreme Court for vilifying one section of the population, and many people are saying, will he be able to represent everyone equally? Will he be the face of Sabka Saath? Now, there are questions because the same questions were asked, let's say, of the minister in the NDA, Mr. Giriraj Singh, who came out and said, and there are very stark comparisons. He came out and actually said that Muslims not voting for BJP is a strategy to weaken Sanatana. On the other side, Udayanidhi Stalin said, Sanatana Dharma is like dengue and malaria must be eradicated. In other words, all those people who are Sanatanis should be actually dehumanized. Giriraj Singh said India blocked divisive and unconstitutional remark. That's what was said about him. That was the reaction. That was a divisive and unconstitutional remark. And the same India bloc on Udayanidhi Stalin said alliance partners are entitled to have their views. So today, viewers, a person who basically doesn't consider a section of society human is going to be leading the state. How does this work? This is a fundamental question. Why isn't anyone talking about it? No media channel, again, from the Latvians eco space or anywhere else is going to talk about it. The entire left ecosystem is silent. They're all sort of agitated constantly about human rights and about the suitability and eligibility of leaders to aspire to greater posts. But here they're quiet, silent. Let's open this up. Let's ask some fundamental questions. Let me first begin with Mr. Pulla Rao. Mr. Pulla Rao, no questions are being asked. Giriraj Singh se to aap 50 sawal puchega. 50 questions will be asked of Giriraj Singh. Why did you single out one particular community? How dare you? You are not fit to be minister. Here, sir, someone who has been rebuked by the Supreme Court, and I'll just put out the quote of what the Supreme Court said about Udayanidhi Stalin. He's going to become Deputy Chief Minister, no questions asked. Why?
Someone whom the Supreme Court rebuked, yes, But the same someone on January 5th this year was received by Prime Minister Narendra Modi, encouraged, everything went on. There's politics on one side, there's a federal structure on the other side. And I want to just draw your kind attention. Unlike the other non-BJP chief ministers, Stalin has never used an abusive word or shown any disrespect to the Prime Minister. Never. Totally a man of decorum. You may disagree with him. You may find something else. And as far as Udayanithi Stalin is concerned, I don't think since that day he has uttered any such sentiments or anything.
But he never apologized.
Well, you see the politics of Tamil Nadu.
No, that's
both
okay.
the
In the
other
name of
gentlemen-
politics,
both the other gentlemen-
you cannot, in the name of creating your constituency, you can't dehumanize another bunch of people who don't vote for
he has
you.
not
That is the
made-
same charge
yeah.
that was made against Giriraj Singh. Why doesn't it apply to Mr. Udayanithi Stalin, sir?
Yes, the Supreme Court has chided him, as you said. He has not raised these issues again.
Okay.
You
He
know,
hasn't
you
raised
get
the
the
issue
point.
again, but he
He has
hasn't
not raised-
apologized. He still reinforced
Well,
his
that-
views. Okay.
Yes, yes.
So
He has
we are
stepped back.
then to expect him to work equally with equal dedication, Dr. Ranganathan. Do you believe this? For those who are Sanatanis in the state.
First of all, to gently correct the previous speaker, that Stalin has never used derogatory words against Prime Minister Modi. That's not entirely correct. Who called Mr. Modi Vasuli Raja? It was Mr. Stalin. So let's not go down that lane. Of course, in politics, what is abusive and what isn't, what is hateful or what isn't, is always subjective. But I have a more substantive point to make. Rahul, that there are two rules, two sets of rules to cater to two sets of ideologies or people is public knowledge. For example, is it not a fact that you and I, increasingly, possibly just me, am considered as an Islamophobe? Why? Just because I speak freely my mind about something, that immediately brands me as an Islamophobe. But the difference is, when Mr. Giriraj Singh says the same thing, he's branded. The difference out here is he is still seeking validation from the people who brand him an Islamophobe. Do we seek validation from them? In fact, we give them validation. We don't care two hoots. That's the difference. Of course, there are two rules. When the future Deputy Chief Minister has called Sanatana Dharma as to be eradicated, the Supreme Court has still not taken suo motu action and put him behind jail. That is disrespecting the Supreme Court judgment of a couple of years ago that said suo motu, the state must charge the person accused of hate speech. Now, if the Supreme Court has itself said what Udayanithi Stalin said for hate speech, why is he still not being charged? The Supreme Court does not see this. So, of course, there are two rules. The fact is, are you perturbed by it? Or are you strong enough to say, look, this is what I feel is right and this is what I will say? The BJP is constantly seeking validation from the people who abuse it. That's the difference.
There you go. Mr. Tirupati, why haven't you pursued this matter? No case has been filed. Let me tell you, I've been breaking a story for 2 days. In the Nupur Sharma matter,
Correct?
the courts have come out and said, in fact, I shared that report, the order of the court, even with Dr. Ranganathan. And it's written there in black and white that the police botched up the investigation into those who raised the Sartan Se Juda slogan, which might have, at least the allegation is that, led to further violence. BJP is silent. Now, Mr. Tirupati, you're in the opposition there.
Yes.
Have you moved court
We have
seeking
yes,
why the Supreme Court's orders asking the state government in the previous iteration, I think it was Kurian Joseph or somebody like that, said that state governments must quickly act to file an affidavit. Where is the affidavit? What is happening? No wonder Mr. Reddy said it's all politics. Chodo bhai.
No, Rahul, we have done enough. We have done enough. We have fought, and so many cases have been filed throughout India. And you all know that Udayanithi Stalin has gone to even Bengaluru court and said that all these cases should be clubbed together, which they have also refused. So you can't say that BJP has not acted.
No, let me tell you, sir. Let me tell you. One second, Dr. Ranganathan, bear me out on this one. Anyone who says anything even slightly critical, YouTubers, whether they are journalists, independent journalists, what have you, are immediately booked.
not only booked, Rahul, there was an instance about a month ago.
Rahul,
When,
Rahul.
Sir, just 10 seconds. Sir, just 10 seconds. There was an incident where a YouTuber took an interview of someone who supports DMK and he said something egregious to DMK. They sent police force to Greater Noida, not only to arrest the person who was being interviewed, to arrest the YouTuber, because they said he interviewed a controversial person. That person is now languishing in jail.
Where is that story?
Rahul,
Where is that story? Where is the BJP on that
Rahul,
story?
No, Rahul,
Okay.
we have filed a case in Madras High Court, and the Madras High Court has listened to it. It is also going, and the Supreme Court also has condemned. So many cases have been filed throughout the country. But as far as Udayanithi Stalin is concerned, yes, what you said is right. That he is an anti-Hindu personality, and definitely he has abused the Hindu community. He has abused
Have you
the
tweeted,
Hindu rituals.
Mr. Tirupati?
Yes,
have you
yes,
tweeted?
yes.
Have you tweeted
Yes,
along
yes.
these lines?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay,
I have
well.
spoken so many debates also.
No.
I have tweeted.
When the
I have been-
news broke yesterday, I don't see anyone. I don't see
I
anyone
think-
having made that
No,
point.
no. Rahul, maybe you would not have seen.
Yeah.
In fact, I have given bites to
Okay.
almost all the national channels.
Okay,
You
well,
can see them.
look, viewers,
And-
the point
yeah.
is that there is a double standard staring us in the face here. And we have to ask ourselves, and I will end by only saying that when the Supreme Court says to Udayanithi Stalin, you abuse your rights under freedom of speech and expression and the right to freedom of religion. These are articles of faith of the Constitution. And then come to the Supreme Court for protection under Article 32. Do you not know the consequences of what you said? You are not a layman, you are a minister. Now he's going to be, of course, viewers, be Deputy Chief Minister. He hasn't retracted the statement, he hasn't apologized for the statement. One wonders if he knows the consequences. And if he doesn't, well then viewers, if he really believes what he has said, then there is reason to wonder. There's reason to wonder about the fate of a large number of people and their status in that state. Think about it, viewers. I want to move on because there is a massive debate that will break out and is breaking out in the United Kingdom. Look at those pictures. Violent protests have rocked the Hare Hills area of Leeds in the United Kingdom, with mobs torching and destroying police cars, public transport and local businesses even pelting stones at the police. Reports suggest the disturbance began after social services removed 4 children from a family. Officers, agency workers had safely removed the children, but locals went on a rampage, vandalizing the area. Hare Hills is home to immigrants, especially people of Pakistani and South Asian origin. The area has now been cordoned off. More police personnel have been deployed to control the situation. No arrests or detentions have been made so far as the police try to contain the area. The Conservative Party has lambasted the new Labour government for losing control of law and order. It's just barely been a few days since the elections. July 4th was the election result. Keir Starmer took over a few days later. Professor Scott Lucas, an international affairs expert, is with us. Professor Lucas, let me ask you, is this a jolt to multiculturalism? And secondly, let me ask you, sir, will this now lead to pressure on the Labour government to reconsider some of its stands on issues of checking immigration into the country?
I think, first of all, it's important to establish the facts and context of the case before getting to the wider questions. The facts are here. I need to tell you that I lived in Leeds. I went to university in Leeds. I worked as a lecturer in Leeds. I lived just up from Hare Hills. So I know the area. And the first thing is, it is a vibrant, multicultural area. I benefited from that. It has people from many different areas of South Asia who have been there, some of them for decades, some of them more recent. It has people from other parts of the world. It's an excellent place to live in. What happened in the specific case, as you began to describe it, however, is, and this is a case that could happen whether you're talking about people are from South Asia, whether they're from another part of the world, or whether from the UK itself, is that the social services came in to take children away. The family didn't think the children should be taken away, in particular the father. Social services called in the police. The situation escalated, and we'll need to establish why. And then other people came in. Now, some people were angry, and that caused the violence. Some people came in to exploit it. to look for headlines. I have to be honest with you. The people that were involved in the violence here were from a number of different backgrounds. This was not, for example, a Muslim riot as it's being portrayed by certain people, including a very destructive politician named Nigel Farage. This was not a Hindu riot, even though there are people who are Hindu who live in the area. And this, of course, was not a white riot, although there were white people that were there, that were involved in this. So that's why I'm careful with you in terms of the wider issue. First of all, to simply say the Labor government has lost control is untrue. This is an incident which happened. It is unfortunate that it happened, but it is not systematic violence, systematic organized violence. It was a situation where a community, there was tension between social services and a family. And I've seen that happen in London. I've seen it happen in Manchester. I've seen it happen in other parts of the UK. Secondly, there is a very real risk here that without examining what this is in terms of a day-to-day basis, that you will see it used as an incident to bash not only another party like the Labour Party, but to bash an entire group of people, an entire community. In other words, it's a situation where people, and unfortunately there are some, they can play upon racism and play upon hatred of certain religions.
So you don't believe that this needs to be sort of examined from the lens of the failure of multiculturalism? You don't believe that, number one. And number two, you don't think that this will prompt Labour to go back to the drawing board and reassess some of its positions on immigration?
I'll say two things in relation to this, which is you got to get beyond the headlines, first of all, this, in terms of, look, you'll need to have an investigation here on the specifics in terms of why social services acted the way they did. Did the family react appropriately? Did others in the community act appropriately? And there were local counselors out there trying to calm that violence. And there were counselors of different faiths that were out there, right? And later on, social media actually said, oh, they're part of the violence. Mm-hmm. That's the risk that was put here. Now, secondly, no, what you need to do is you need to go back and look at what's behind immigration, which is there are issues like housing. There are issues, for example, like social care. There are issues like education that are part of any community.
Okay.
When you have problems with social care, then this type of thing can happen. So you need to get to the fundamental issues rather than just shouting.
Okay, so at this moment, viewers, let's not jump to any conclusions. Let the facts play out. Once there is a cool-headed analysis of the situation, one can come to asking the larger questions. Professor Scott Lucas, thank you very much. He's an international affairs expert who lives around this area, so has a great insight, a worm's view, so to speak. Thank you very much. Viewers, The Right Stand coming up.
Climate change is on our doorstep. It's time for a revolution to take root. And it starts with 1.4 billion Indians. It starts with one tree for humanity, one tree for Mother Earth, one tree for our future. Project One Tree, a News 18 network initiative.
कार इंश्योरेंस
This is CNN News 18 and Federal Bank Primetime Studio.
Namaste, Jai Hind and welcome to this edition of The Right Stand. I'm Anand Narsimhan coming to you live from the CNN News 18 and Federal Bank Primetime Studio. First up, ladies and gentlemen, we should pat ourselves on the back because we are already on the path to becoming the third largest economy in the world. In fact, Bharat is the third largest economy with respect to purchasing power parity, just behind China and the USA already. Meanwhile, industry body FICCI has pegged the annual median GDP growth forecast for the year 2024-25 at 7%. The median growth forecast for agriculture and allied activities is projected at 3.7% for the 2024-25 year period. Even industry and services sector are anticipated to grow in the current fiscal year. Meanwhile, Bharat's fintech industry is projected to reach $420 billion by 2029 at a CAGR of 31%, thus reflecting a cumulative annual growth rate of 31%. The growth has been attributed to favorable government policies promoting digital economy initiatives. And according to a survey by the Retailers Association of India,